7 years, courtesy of Ann Montague, we've done a big series on women named at the time Rosie the Riveters. These were the women who went to work during World War II while their husbands, sons, boyfriends, whatever, were away at war. And these folks kept the country going, helped make the munitions and the ships and whatever. And over the course of time, they have decided that the name should just be Rosie's, and that's where we stop today as the bus pulls in to Elkins, West Virginia, to meet Linda Shomo. She is the daughter of a Rosie, and she joins us via telephone. Linda, good morning. How are you? And thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Rob. I'm doing just great.
Happy
to be here.
We're glad to have you. Do you have air conditioning at your house working fine today?
I actually do, thank goodness.
Well, let's keep it that way there, Linda.
Yeah.
Linda, tell us the story of your mom and her experience as a Rosie.
Okay. My mother, her name was Leanna Ferris. She was a Rosie the Riveter during World War II. She actually riveted the B-29 bombers, and she wired the bombers.
So she was literally a riveter then?
She was a true riveter.
She was one of the OGs.
Yeah, she was a supervisor for the Riveters. She said if they didn't do their job just perfectly, the planes would go down, and she instilled that in all of her workers. No matter what you do, you have to do everything perfectly. They had training. She's pretty incredible.
Well, that's quite the story for her. What was she before she was a Rosie the Riveter, Linda?
She was just a mother. She and my husband had just gotten married. My husband, her husband, my dad, couldn't afford a diamond for my mother. He was working in Akron, Ohio, also as a welder. So he took some of the metal from the B-29 bomber, and he forged a ring for my mother and shaped it like a diamond. He presents it to my mother, and he said, "Here's your diamond."
Oh, my.
The most incredible ring. Yeah. Perfectly done.
Now, did this take place before World War II? Were they married before then or after?
No, that was during World War II.
Right during World War II, okay.
And then, my father left, I guess, in 1943 for Italy and then for Germany.
And your mother worked at the plant for how long?
She worked there, 3 years.
Until the conclusion of the war?
Yep. She was promised she could sit in a B-29 bomber along with some of the other Rosies at that time, but the war ended. My mother was so disappointed. She never did get to sit in the B-29 bomber.
Did the Rosies of her town, were they numerous? Were there many women from her town who worked as riveters?
Actually, they were. She had lived in a place in West Virginia. They traveled to Ohio, and my grandparents lived in Ohio, and she took a job at the Goodyear aircraft, and there were quite a few women that had moved, I guess, to Akron to be riveters.
Did your mom have any kids at the time she was doing the riveting?
She had my two older brothers, Gary and Dick.
Two older brothers. So who took care of them? Was it your grandparents while your mom was at the mill?
Yep. My grandmother babysit the boys while Mom was working, and they conserved on everything. They not only worked as Rosie the Riveters at that time in a Goodyear aircraft. After work, they had a family to come home to. So they gave their all during World War II.
I have two more questions for you, and then Matt and Jonathan are going to have some questions for you as well. When did your mom pass?
My mother passed October the 7th, 2007.
2007. And you have two projects that you are working on, a statue and a new species of tulip named for Rosies. Can you tell us about that?
Okay. The Rosie statue, my term is, I'm the president of a garden club, the Emma Scott Garden Club in Elkins. My term ends at the end of this month. So this was my presidential project As president of the Emma Scott Garden Club of Randolph County, I chose to do a bronze 6'3" Rosie the Riveter statue to beautify the landscape and educate the public and honor the Rosies that did so much for us during World War II. And the reason I actually did the Rosie Project was to inspire other garden clubs to be great and do more. And I was hoping that once our project was completed, other garden clubs across America would do the same. They would have a statue designed and placed in a veterans field, collect all the Rosie the Riveters names in their area so that the Rosies would never be forgotten.
Matt Miller.
Linda, take us to, you just mentioned the statue itself and the idea that others might jump on board and all of the names of Rosie the Riveters from those areas would be recognized. What does the statue look like, and would there be those names on the statue there in Elkins of those from West Virginia?
Mm-hmm. The statue is a bronze statue. She's 6'3". She stands on a black marble pedestal infused with steel. All the names that we could collect in our garden club of Rosie the Riveters are engraved on the statue. And our engineer with Thrasher Engineering is working on a location next to the statue where we will continue to add Rosie the Riveters from West Virginia.
Has there been a challenge, or what has it been like to try to find all of those names from across the Mountain State?
You know, it was pretty interesting. Excuse me. Once word got out, people were calling left and right, giving names. I'm still receiving names. That's why we're adding a section to include any name that didn't make it on the statue. We don't want any of the Rosies to be forgotten. And so over the years, continuing forward, if somebody steps up, gives us a name, we will add that name to the Rosie the Riveter monument.
Take me back to your mom. As you were describing what she went through, I immediately wrote down transition to and from. What did she ever talk about what it was like to go from being a mom to now very quickly moving into an industry where, as you said, the rivets had to be put in perfectly to keep those planes up? That sounds like a lot of pressure and all that's going on with a world war. And then a few years later, she's back out of that position and kind of resuming life. Those two transitions had to be just very impactful.
Well, excuse me, my father had enlisted to be in World War II. So he was going over to fight for our country. My mother decided at that time, she was a mother, and she wanted to do everything she could do to support my father and bring him home sooner. And her way of doing this was to take a job at Goodyear Aircraft, and she ended up being a riveter. And she wired the planes as well. But everything she did during World War II was to bring our father home.
And then that transition kind of back out of being in the plant to being back at home, was that a hard transition?
Oh, my goodness. When she left the Goodyear Aircraft, my father was pretty traumatized from the war, and he wanted a peaceful place to live. So he moved to West Virginia to a place called Kings Run. When they moved back to Kings Run, my mother had all of her items shipped to this farm. They bought this beautiful farm, but she shipped her washing machine back. The house had no electricity, no running water. My mother said she was just traumatized. She had to wash clothes on a washboard. And her washing machine sit there, but she couldn't plug it in. There was no electricity. It took them a couple years, but they had electricity put in the house, and it took a lot more years to get the water in that house. But that was the trauma of switching from living in the city, I guess, to the country.
Jonathan Bodwell.
Did she, when she got back, when the war was over, your father got back, did she ever go back to working outside the house again, or?
Oh, my mother was something else. She was a super mother. And again, living in West Virginia was difficult to find work for my father, and he still had PTSD, and we didn't know it back then. He fought on the front lines in Italy and Germany. So my mother, she cleaned houses. She was a homemaker, and then she cleaned houses on the side. Later, she decided to go to school and get her cosmetology license, and she was told she could never get her own business, but you could never tell her she couldn't do something. She started her own business, Ferris's Beauty Salon. She was very successful. During that period, she decided to run for mayor of Elkins to clean up the water. She gave that a good run. And then she was on all types of, in clubs, on committees, always helping the community in any way she could.
She sounds like she was an absolutely amazing woman. Hey, I got to ask a question that's completely on a different subject. It's about 200 degrees here in the eastern Panhandle the last couple of days. I know Elkins is one of the coldest places in the world, and it's always 20 degrees colder there. How is the weather in Elkins today?
Oh, my goodness, it's hot. It's like, I think it's in the 90s up here.
Wow, you guys don't even get the reprieve.
No, it was a bit humid yesterday, but again, we get a little bit of a breeze. It's beautiful up here, and it's actually, although it's hot, still a good day to get out and work in your yard.
What advice would you give young people today about how, the women who had never worked before, who banded together and kept our country going on the home front during World War II. What is some advice that you give young people today?
I would give them, I would tell young people today, never give up. You can do it. The Rosie's motto was, we can do it. Well, they can do it. They need to believe in themselves, and they need to build their confidence in everything they do, and no matter what, if they don't think they can do it, well, they can do it. They just need to believe in themselves.
And Shomo is our guest here. She is the daughter of an actual Rosie the Riveter. Her mother was an actual riveter. Would you say B-29s, Linda, that she worked with?
Yep, B-29 bombers.
B-29 bombers, right. So there has been a movement over the years for those women who did work in factories and such but weren't riveters to just call themselves Rosies as opposed to Rosie the Riveters. And I have found in interviewing these ladies over the last 15 years, it's a bit like the distinction when I interview people who were in the service during maybe World War II or Korea or Vietnam over the years who did not actually see combat. And they're all quick to tell you, I didn't see combat. They want to make sure you know the distinction between someone who served and saw combat and someone who served but did not. And it seems like the Rosies over the years have been the same way. The ones that were riveters will tell you they were riveters, but the ones who weren't are quick to tell you, no, I wasn't a riveter. This is what I did, but I wasn't a riveter. Have you noticed that as well?
Not a whole lot. My mother really didn't talk about it. And what I found, and I've honored quite a few Rosies, they never told their families they were even Rosie the Riveters or that they did any of these things. They're just the greatest women. They're called the great ones. And my mother, let's see, she's a riveter. She never classified. They were just proud of what they did, and that the war ended and they brought their husbands or whoever home.
And at the time, I guess they didn't really know they were Rosie the Riveters, did they? That handle kind of came a little later.
They did, and the only reason I found out my mother was a Rosie, I took her to the Air and Space Museum next to Dulles Airport.
Yes.
She was failing in health, and she was in a wheelchair. I roll her in. She's looking at the B-29 bomber, and she had tears. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I never thought I'd see it again."
Oh, my. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they were. That's why they were called the greatest generation. The things that they saw and what they went through and the sacrifices that they made. And I want to go also to the Tulip, if you could, and your interaction with the Netherlands on this.
Wow. Well, it was on April the 6th of 23. My husband, Charles, and Ann Montague, and I attended a celebration for the ambassador of the Netherlands. It was the Hill reception, they called it, I believe. And at that, Ann had told me about the event, and I thought, well, this would be a good way to get maybe a grant from the Netherlands for the tulip. So we attended, and I had a letter written on my letterhead from the garden club. The mayor of Elkins wrote a letter, but they had already given out all their grants. And so I had traveled 4 hours to D.C. The ambassador was impressed that a president of a garden club had attended the event. I was pulled aside by one of the high-ranking officials there, Hugo, and taken to their Department of Agriculture. And they, at that point, told me that the ambassador would like to name a tulip Rosie the Riveter and give our garden club the first in the world. So about a month, maybe 2 months ago, we attended another event at the ambassador's residence in D.C., and each of us were handed now a sample of what the Rosie the Riveter tulip would look like. It's beautiful. It's pink. And Ann Montague and I christened the Rosie the Riveter tulip at that event. This fall, the embassy will present my garden club with enough bulbs to plant around the Rosie Riveter around the Rosie Riveter statue that we just placed in our Veterans Field in Elkins this past week. So this spring, we will have Rosie Riveter tulips growing in Elkins. Those tulips will not go on sale for 4 to 5 years.
Would you like other garden clubs around the country to follow this movement?
I would love for other garden clubs to follow this movement. The statue company in Provo, Utah, Big Statues, is veteran-owned. They said they will give a discount to anyone else, any other garden club that would like to add a statue to a veterans field. And once the tulips start propagating, we would be glad to even share some tulips with other locations for their gardens.
Are you getting a response at this time from any other garden clubs? Is it starting to, pick up?
I've been called by 2 other garden clubs, one in Billington, West Virginia. The American Legion asked that I come and brief them on the Rosie Riveter project and how could they get something like this started. There was another possibility in Charleston, West Virginia. This is so new. We're the first garden club in probably the world to ever do this. So it's brand new. But I think once it takes off, it'll be a way for garden clubs to re-energize their clubs and recognize the Rosies and not let them be forgotten.
Linda, I think you got a little bit of your mom's DNA inside you, huh?
She was pretty cool.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess, huh? A little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. What's next for you? What's next for you in the garden club and the Rosie the Riveter movement?
Oh, the next big thing we'll be doing, we have a veterans field where the Rosie statue is right this moment, and she's covered in a blue and red tarp. We will unveil this statue on July the 14th at 2 p.m. We'd like to invite anyone that would like to attend this event. We will, as a garden club, work with the veterans and we will complete the entire field. We will bring other veteran memorials throughout the county into the field. Whatever the veterans want to have installed in the field, we will work with them to get those in. We want to put lighted sidewalks through the veterans field and put a nice parking lot. At this point, they have no sidewalks. They have no parking lot. So difficult for them to get to the field. We do have a veterans memorial there, and we recently had a gold star marker placed in the field. It was a Woody Allen project by our Rotary Club. It's 15 feet long. It's 5 feet tall. It is absolutely exquisite. So it's about 15 feet from the gold star that was just placed in the field over to the Rosie statue.
Well, Linda, it was great sharing this half hour with you. You're a marvelous person, and you tell a wonderful story, and I thank you so much for sharing it with us this morning.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you kindly, and stay cool today, okay?
All right, you guys have a good day.
You
Thanks,
too.
Linda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.